What's good, y'all? I've got some really sick and simple buffs for Typhlosion. No, I did not opt to give him a fire and ground typing. There are a lot of funky and probably weirder type changes in this hack. However, I personally just don't really like the vibe of part ground type on Typhlosion. I know the Pokedex says he's a volcano. I know he's vaguely based on a badger, and so you could construe that as the ground typing. And honestly, like I said, there are weirder type changes in this hack, so I'm not trying to say that I'm like I'm scoffing at the idea of it. I just personally don't like it that much. It also feels like there'd be too many fire ground types because there is I believe there are 2 new fire ground types in this hack, as well as, of course, Camera. So, yeah, that's why I didn't make him fire ground. Pure Fire is still great. It has good defensive capabilities, and of course, he is incredibly strong with the abilities Berserk and Hubris. Berserk fits his whole vibe of getting super angry and can work really well with Morning Sun or Focus Sash or Endure. Kind of functions like Blaze in that way, but of course it's much better. While Hubris is essentially like basically Berserk, you can use against the AI to rack up an infinite stat boost. You can even get the +6 with Berserk and Morning Sun versus an opponent that's like debuffed. For example, every single Pokemon in this game gets like stuff like Parting Shot and other debuffing moves, so all you have to do is neuter the opponent in front of you, and as long as they don't have a switch move or a crit move, they'll be doing way less damage, which, I mean, in a lot of cases they will have a switch or crit move. But if they don't, then you can essentially send in your Typhlosion and Morning Sun and get up like 4 Berserk boosts, or however many Berserk boosts you need. Honestly, any more than like 2 is kind of overkill. Anyways, meanwhile with Hubris, it actually requires you to knock something out to get a special attack boost. Hubris functions like Soul Heart, so not only is it special Moxie for all of the single battles, for the scattered double boss fights throughout the hack, Hubris will shine especially, and that's when I would especially tend to use it. Otherwise, Berserk is a lot more fun. You can also hard switch him into a lot of attacks and get that Berserk boost and then, kill stuff. But yeah, before I get into any more of the cool new things that Typhlosion can do, I do want to have a disclaimer for any new viewers who are here to check out that Google Sheet linked right down below in the description. You can check out all 600 plus move buffs and changes, as you can see on screen right now. If you click it right here, it'll direct you to this move guide, and they've got all these various categories, and I have changed pretty much every single move, so I highly encourage you to give that a look. Bookmark Google Sheet if it interests you, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. But with that out of the way, yeah, Berserk and Hubris are very fitting abilities for Typhlosion. Sweeping abilities in general are a little bit less good in this hack because of all the anti-setup stuff, especially in a hardcore Nuzlocke, which is kind of what the hack is balanced around. Obviously, if you're not doing a Nuzlocke, then you can just, spam moves and get Hubris boosts, and you can spam moves, get Hubris boost, and then once your Typhlosion dies, it dies. It doesn't matter because you're not doing a Nuzlocke. He also does resist the most common priority move in the game in First Impression, which means that Hubris sets are a little bit more viable because of that. Not that it's not ever going to be viable, but I'm saying you're not going to be able to 6-0 the trainer in a lot of cases. Although, late game, you got Scarf Eruption with Hubris, it's, pretty crazy with, just to send it in and get a bunch of kills, but there's a lot of nuances that may not be immediately apparent that the trainers will be using against you. It won't be as easy as it might just seem. Not to mention you do need a Choice Scarf to outspeed a lot of things, especially when you're not guaranteed a max speed IV or a plus speed nature. You're going to be a lot slower than you would think, so you're going to need Choice Scarf for a lot of boss fights just to outspeed things. Bulkier sets are still viable. His bulk was decreased just for the stat distribution because I did want him to be a little bit more physical, because in this ROM hack, not only do you have access to infinite usability capsules, you also have access to instant EB training. So that means that for certain boss fights, despite having a roughly 35 base attack lower physical attack stat, physical sets are still very viable, especially because his physical coverage is, vastly superior to his special coverage just by nature of what he is. His special coverage is solid. He has pretty much all he would ever want. He's got Fire, Ground, Fighting later on, Grass technically, but the more important, like, immediate spammable coverage moves are, Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball, and Sludge Bomb, as well as Earth Power. And then, I did, I'm not, totally against the idea of Ground Typhlosion, which is why I did give him some widely distributed ground moves in this hack. There's a lot of previously signature moves that are all just regular old moves. For example, Precipice Blaze is just stronger, kind of like a mix between Earthquake and Stone Edge. It has a 30% chance to burn. It's 130 base power, 85% accurate. It's a very strong move, which is why it's very early. I also gave Typhlosion physical moves a lot earlier than the special ones. In fact, I might even switch Searing Shot and Flare Blitz, but yeah, I think I will actually. He already has Berserk and Hubris, so this is more fair. For a lot of Pokemon that have lower in one stat, I typically give them the moves earlier, so that way, for certain points in the game, the physical sets are genuinely better. Not to mention, again, you do have much more physical coverage. You have all of the same types that you have on the special side, and then more. So like Play Rough, Wild Charge, you know, those are pretty important. 110 base power, recoil moves, Takedown, Rock Climb, you know, you got Rock moves, which are a big deal. So your physical coverage is like infinitely superior. Even stuff like Grass Knot, which is not physical. So yeah, in general, you're going to be running a lot of mixed sets for certain boss fights if you are trying to hit things super effectively. But honestly, you don't need to do that. You can just use Typhlosion as like a spam fire move, parting shot type mon, like whenever something in front of you that you can't touch, you can parting shot. Of course, you do have good coverage options for certain fights, but I wouldn't say Earth Power is like a staple that you're going to keep on your moveset at all times. The only thing that I would say is a staple is a Fire Stab move. And even then, for certain fights, you actually might be able to justify running purely support, especially if you're doing a team lock Nuzlocke and you need your Typhlosion to fulfill a certain role for that fight. You do get stuff like Battle Cry upon evolution, which is a great utility move in conjunction with Parting Shot. You get early moves like Belly Drum, which is pretty great with priority moves in the form of Pyro Dash. On the special side, you also have Ignite. You also get a Sucker Punch and First Impression for physical priority. So for certain boss fights, like I said, you can always tack on these little physical coverage moves to hit a specific Pokemon super effectively, despite the fact that your physical attack set is much lower, and you can easily swap around your EVs and run max attack for certain fights. So that's a big beauty of being a mixed attacker in this hack, and that's why I make a lot of Pokemon mixed attackers, if they make sense, which Typhlosion obviously does. He's like a giant bear guy. I think he totally makes sense to be physically, you know, decently strong as well. Hold on, let me just switch this before I forget. 48 is Searing Shots. Flare Blitz at Flare Blitz. There we go. So, yeah, I don't know. He's just a very simple Pokemon. I mean, the abilities fit him very well. Hubris fits his like kind of cocky, angry attitude, while Berserk is like outwardly just he gets angry and gets stronger because of it. You know, his neck flares up or whatever. It's fitting ability, and I also do have to keep in mind overlap with the other Pure Fire types. For example, I can't give him Drought because there's already 3 Pure Fire types with Drought, and that's actually some of the worst overlap in the game, but there's nothing I can really do about it because I'm not going to remove it from Torkoal, and then all of the Simian monkeys have it, and all the evolutions have elemental abilities. They all are pretty different, though, with Flareon especially being, like, bulkier than the other two, and well, they all have their own little nuances, and Torkoal being by far the bulkiest of the 3, and then Simisear being by far the fearless. So I'm not saying like it's the end of the world, and they also all have a secondary ability that is different and unique, so, and different moves and all that. But my point is that's why I didn't get Typhlosion Drought. And if I did make him a Fire and Ground type, he would actually have to lose Berserk because Camerupt has it, and it's more fitting on Camerupt in my opinion. So I would probably end up giving him something like Sheer Force, which is probably better anyways, but it's kind of boring, so I don't know. I like this style of buff. It's pretty simple. He is the only one of the Johto starters that is no longer dual type. Sorry, that is not a dual type. I did change for Alligator from the original rendition. But yeah, overall, you know, stuff like Burn Up is super strong. That is a 140 base power move that will always burn the opponent, so you can use that in conjunction with Parting Shot to switch out after you burn them and deal, you know, big damage. You can switch in on an attack, get a Berserk boost, you know, use that +1 attack Burn Up, and then, you know, switch out with Parting Shot or U-turn. Howl is great with Power Trip. Howl will give you +2 attack and special attack, and then Power Trip will give you another +1 attack. It only has 3 PP, which is just a balancing measure, so you can't like 6-0 trainer fights. It's more of like, it functions a lot differently now because of that. It's kind of just like first of all, you can kill 3 Pokemon with it despite it not being stabbed, and then it also is like a boosting option instead of like being a move that abuses boosts. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, Land's Wrath is another like widely distributed move that a lot of special ground types get. It just functions like, essentially it's the same as Blast Burn, both of which are versions of Draco Meteor. So Land's Wrath is ground type Draco Meteor, Blast Burn is fire type Draco Meteor. Those are both really nice, especially in conjunction with Heat Wave, which is a move that will always crit. So that's really strong because it'll ignore the special attack drop. You do have Nasty Plot and Swords Dance and Woke Up, but again, like I said, setup is not the best thing in the world, although, you know, you could run like a Berserk, Nasty Plot, Endure, Salackberry, you know, cheese set or something. Morning Sun is still viable to, you know, even though your bulk is lower, you can always, the thing is you're fighting against AI, right? So they're not going to switch out into the optimal matchup. So if you switch it in on something that their best move to hit you is a certain thing, they'll probably just use it. So you can totally Morning Sun up there. Although, honestly, I'm making this sound easier, but I'm also, I don't want to oversell it. I also don't want to undersell it. You all see when the game is out eventually, but yeah, super solid abilities as a whole. Priority moves, you know, pretty standard for this hack, very standard. Counter just-in-time Proton Komoa if you need it. That goes for pretty much all the Pokemon that learned that move. Overheat is fire type Flare Blitz. Fire Vortex is like a stronger, more accurate version of Magma Storm. You know, you got all types of nuanced move buffs and changes, so I highly recommend you just check those out in the description below. Another thing I didn't cover yet is Weather Ball, which is another special coverage option, as well as Natural Gift. Weather Ball is a special move that pretty much all Pokemon that are special attackers learn in this hack. So if you're running like a Sand or Hail or even technically Sun Rain team, you can actually use that for coverage on Typhlosion. For certain boss fights, you know, if you're playing a team like Nuzlocke and you have a Pokemon that has Drizzle as one of its 2 abilities, you can actually use that as like a very niche situation to use Water type Weather Ball and Typhlosion and not use your Fire type stab for that fight, and then you can switch out. And then of course the Rock and Ice type coverage is good with the other 2 weathers. You also have Nature Power. Nature Power is huge with Terrain. So under Grassy Terrain, which is again a widely distributed TM in this hack, and also a you know, relatively common ability, about a dozen or so Pokemon have Grassy Terrain or Grassy Surge. Nature Power will give you Energy Ball, Electric Terrain, or whatever will give you T-Bolt, and then you also get Psychic from Psychic Terrain, and Moonblast from Misty Terrain, which is by far the least common of the 3. But those first 3 especially are really cool coverage options that Typhlosion could run under Terrain or Weather if you have a Terrain or Weather setter on your team. That's nice for the special coverage. And then, of course, Natural Gift is a 110 base power move that consumes a held berry. So, for example, if you run Yachi Berry, you get a 110 base power Ice type move. It's a single-use thing, so it's a very niche thing, but on sweeping abilities like Hubris, it's pretty useful if you want to blast through a certain Pokemon that resists your stab or whatever. So you can go ahead and use that for certain boss fights. It's pretty situational, but it's a cool move. Yeah, that's really about it. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Sorry for the fire ground, you know, Typhlosion lovers. I just personally don't like the idea of it too much. So yeah, peace.